photographic training video you are about to watch is part of the Photo Education Network, created to provide one-stop shopping where professionals and amateurs alike can go to find photographic-related training videos, workbooks, and audio tapes. Topics include everything from posing and lighting to weddings, from senior portraiture to children's photography. To view individual titles and to read about the instructors, visit the Photo Education Network at www.photoeducation.com, or to receive a full catalog of available titles, call the Photo Education Network toll-free at 1-800-510-1765.
Remember the three things that the consumer is looking for? Relationship, experience, and predictable consistency. So, in setting the stage for this, we have to ask ourselves several questions. One, what is our policy? What is our objective? And what can we do to make her feel special? Remember the signs flashing, I'm important. You bet she's important. She's your livelihood. She's your future. There's a lot of egoism in the portrait market to where people make the decisions based upon what they want to do. Fact is, what happens if they're not a consumer-driven business is that they go out, they go to a seminar, they see a product, they come home, they make that product, and then try to figure out how to sell it. They have no clue in the world whether or not it's even sellable. They haven't talked to the consumer. They don't know if it's important. They just liked it because it makes them feel important. And yet a consumer-driven business is the one that has all of the steps locked down. Nothing is an accident. The display is not an accident. The colors and tones that we use are not an accident. How I dressed, how I uniform myself, it's not an accident. You know, in some studios, they actually take their staff shopping. I think that's fair. I mean, if you bring someone in who has never really learned this, and they do not know how to dress themselves, but you do, why don't you take them shopping? Why don't you teach them the things that professionalism requires? Why don't you teach them the proper tones and colors that look best for them? Why don't you teach them how to become a professional instead of bringing someone in and expecting them to be a professional? It doesn't work that way. There's nothing normal in sales. It's a game. It's a pre-planned chess game that has predictable results with predictable responses if we do the predictable known steps ahead of time. It's not an accident. It's not an accident that some people have tremendous sales averages. It's not an accident that someone has poor sales averages. It's not an accident that one studio can sell designer images framed and completed. It's not an accident if another studio can only sell images not finished and sent out unframed and unmatted. It's not an accident. It's a choice. It's a decision. And therein lies the question. She's looking at you. She's categorized you. What are you going to do? I can make several suggestions, but normally I find it best for a studio to sit back and ask themselves, if I were in my consumer's feet, how would I want to be treated? How would I want to be respected? What would I want them to do for me if they really wanted to let me know that I was important to them? And I think it would vary from person to person, but I think we all would love to be treated well. Let me give you a story, the story of restaurants. And I'll give you the story of cross-marketing. The story of restaurants goes like this. I go to visit a studio owner. We're trying to finish up a business meeting. He says, Bob, let's grab a quick bite to eat. We'll go over to McDonald's. We'll just get something quick. We don't have much time. Not a problem. Let's swing by. And we walk up there, and they walk in the door, and they say, Mr. Quick, welcome to McDonald's. We have just now introduced the McSteak. It is our newest offering. We would love to have you try the McSteak. I look at my business associate and say, well, fine, why not? Let's give it a whirl. So we sit back and we talk and we wait 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 and we talk and we wait. And all of a sudden they say, Mr. Quick, your order's ready. And I walk up there and here's 2 plates with these incredible 24-ounce ribeye premium steaks cooked to perfection, you know, with garnishes and steamed veggies. And they have a bottle of Chateaubriand right there. And they say, that will only be $155, Mr. Quick. Now, that wasn't what I was expecting from a McSteak. Now, by the same token, comes a time that my wife and I are going to go out for an evening. I promised her an evening that is going to be wonderful. So I drive around and I see this beautiful, beautiful gourmet restaurant. And I look at them, and these people, they actually have a little guy that parks cars out in front. And I'm thinking, this is it. This really looks good. So I call and I make my reservations. I show up that night. My wife is dressed to the nines. We walk in the door. They park my car. I come in, and Henri meets me at the door. You know, welcomes me. He's ready. He sets me down. The waiter comes up, and he puts styrofoam cups on the table and pours me a glass of water and asks if I would like to look at the wine list. Of course, they only have 2 choices, which is Mogan David and Boone's Farm apple wine in plastic glasses. Cross-marketing. In other words, somebody somewhere failed to understand that the products and the expectations of the consumer are already set. So if you've set the stage for them to come in and expect gourmet treatment, then they must see it at every step of the process. Now, what if we opened this restaurant? What if I opened a gourmet restaurant and I never bothered to develop the staff until the day of opening? They are unfamiliar with the price list. They're unfamiliar with our specialties. They're unfamiliar with our identity. They just needed a job. They're a warm body. I didn't want to spend the money ahead of time, and I didn't want to spend 2 or 3 weeks or a month training them and getting them ready. We'll do it on the job. So they come into this gourmet restaurant. They walk in expecting this treatment. The valet guy doesn't even have a driver's license and runs their car off into a post. Henri is actually a retired guy that walks in and says, yeah, what do you want? They seat them down, and some little kid comes by, you know, with purple hair chewing on their mouth like that, and says, you know, okay, fine, Buster, you know, place your order. And I use that descriptively to express to you that's what we do so often in the studio. You don't train your people on the customer. You train them before the customer so that on opening day, that you have predetermined the experience that you want them to have. The people know your menu. They know your specialties. They are ready to do the job. They're ready to create the experience. And think about the impact of that. Sometimes we need to do and we need to step back. So now she's looking at you. She's adjusting herself. She's categorized you once based upon what you dress and look like. She's categorized the studio based upon what it looks like and feels like. The words. The words. Now, I'm going to stop and I'm going to digress just a little bit here and talk about words, the power of words. For example, a big mistake that you'll make is that if the studio didn't teach you professional words and phrases. For example, I hear people still referring to portraits as pictures. Pictures. I hear people referring to properly designed and properly sized prints as big ones. Big ones. I hear people talking about explaining to someone how they should display a print by asking where they're going to hang it. I hear people using terms, instead of talking about creating an image, they talk about shooting the customer. Now, I say this for one important point, is remember going back to the words that we use? She now forms an impression. She's cataloged you. She's comparing you to everybody else in the area. And the pride that you demonstrate to them and your knowledge of your superior products and your superior portraits really now at this point in time tells her whether or not you're really a professional. If you sound like the local amateur guy down in the camera store, you will have lost her. You will have lost her. So now it comes to that point in time in terms of, do you know how to express yourself? How do you take control of the conversation? How do you handle the initial greeting when they come in? That is natural to you. First of all, it cannot be canned. It has to be you. Greeting someone important. What would you say to the President of the United States? How would you greet them? Would you be a little bit more formal? I would suggest yes. Why? It's a sign of respect. Now, by the same token, when someone comes in, how do I greet her? First of all, let me make a couple recommendations. One of which is that have a very, very effective display that is very attractive, that allows her to look. In other words, make sure that your front end display, the first impression, knocks her socks off. Have the right music. And when she comes in, gain and maintain control by doing the same thing you did on the phone. Begin interviewing, asking questions, relating back to the first conversations. Let me give you an example. Mrs. Jones has called. We've done a good job. She wants to come, and she is coming in for our design consultation or our tips appointment. She comes in. I verify that's who she is. And I would probably say something, I'm Bob, and I was really looking forward to meeting you. I'm really glad that you came by. Now, one of the things I would do at that point in time, I would find out if you're in an urban area, has she been on the road for a while? Where did she come from? Let me share with you why. Is that if she's been on the road a little bit, she may need a little bit of time to freshen up. To compose herself. So find out where she's coming from. Find out, if there are any comfort needs. Would you like a drink? Would you like a cup of coffee, a cup of tea? Would you like a soft drink? And I think this is very critical that you set the stage for her to find out if there's any things that you could do, to comfort her and to help her with her creature comforts. So I think that you ought to have in place some type of service that would cater to her physical needs. You're already visually cueing her emotional needs to take care of her physical needs. Now, just by doing that, you're transmitting to her what? I'm prepared to take care of you. Now, should she come in and somebody is not finished, heaven forbid that it would happen, but it happens all the time. First of all, acknowledge her presence. Welcome her. Apologize to her. Now, you should have actually handled that on the phone, believe it or not. You should have told her that we will set a personal appointment for you at 1 o'clock. In the event that you come in that we're not quite finished, and then explain to her what you'll be doing. We try to give everybody full attention. And so we'll finish as quickly as we can with them, and because you are very important to us. Because it is irritating if you've traveled some distance and you believe that now this is your time slot. This is mine. This is not hers. This is mine. And so you need to handle this in a professional manner so that nothing that you're doing is not salving or solving any potential negative hits in any way, shape, or form. Because everything at this point in time is about feeling. She has not decided if she's commissioning you. She does not know. She's intrigued by you. She has not made her decision. And so this is all about feelings and impressions. Now, when you come down, You don't just immediately jump into your presentation. Let's say that you have a formal presentation of hundreds of ideas that other people have created. And that's why she's actually there. I would begin the conversation by asking her what kind of thought she has given and how she's feeling about personalizing her portrait. I would start with the conversation that was ended on the phone, and I would carry it over into this conversation right now. I would get her talking. And I would spend a little bit of time really reaffirming which way that we're going. Now, normally, she doesn't know for sure. You have offered her some alternatives that nobody else has offered. She now is here simply to look at your menu. She doesn't know if she's going to buy lobster at market prices or she's going to go with the blue plate special. She doesn't know. And so what you're about to do in this presentation is to expand her horizons visually, to intrigue her emotionally. And there are several very, very important cues in this process. Is that one of which is the type of music that you use. Music that speaks to the inner person and as a result has an effect based upon the consumer. For example, if you're showing a presentation to a senior, you're not wanting her mellowing out because her reason for buying a photograph, the DBM, the dominant buying motivation in the senior, has more to do with her personal appearance, her funkiness, her history, and a lot of stuff. In other words, it's a little bit higher, racier type movement, whereas a mother or a woman looking for a children's portrait, the actual DBM, and I hate to say this, is coupled with two things, one of love and fear. Love of the family, love of the child, love of what is going on, and fear that it's ending. Fear that this precious child and this time in this child is slowly wandering through her hands. Fear that their family, and seeing and sensing that the family is about ready to be moved apart. They're getting married, they're going to go on another journey. The family now, the fabric of that family is changing. And they want to do something that will stop this moment in time to historically help her hold on to the feelings, because she knows it's never going to be the same. This precious little one will never, ever, ever be this way again. It's not going to happen. The little nuances. And you intrigued her with the idea that maybe you could do something for her versus just throw them down in front of a muslin background and snap a photograph and show likenesses of faces. So you've intrigued her about other possibilities. She doesn't know yet what she's going to do. So as you go through the presentation, understand the music and how you craft that. One of the things that is very powerful is to have stories that you can tell of images that are going to be shown to her. And I think it's very important from a display standpoint that you have samples of finished originals on your wall that are going to be from that show that you can refer, because any presentation, whether it be the use of a color view, a slide, using some digital projection or whatever, will never have the power or the effect of a finished portrait. She needs to know and understand that this is just a way with which she is going to be able to view her ideas. But you need to show her the power and the beauty of what you and your artistic team are going to be able to do for her. And so you can refer back. So you actually put displays up that are going to strengthen your team's ability to express to them what your capabilities are. When you sit back and you start your show, there's a couple disclaimers that I suggest that you do. First of all, you must tell her that the reason that you're doing this is to get a feeling and a sense of how she wants to feel about her portrait. 2, express to her that remember that her portrait and her image, because it's unique, will not be represented. See, what happens a lot of time is they get the idea that this is a shopping list and that they're looking for blue, white, red, yellow balls. And that somehow or another, somewhere in there, she'd say, well, I want the one by that tree. Well, that's not what we're trying to do with this. We're trying to get a sense of the feeling, the dignity, and we also want to convey to her our capabilities of creating an image that would be unique. We have the traditional, we have the promotional opportunities, we have the designer. Honestly, ma'am, we're really trying to find out what it is you really want and separate the difference between what you need and what you want. Now, another thing that you're doing for your own information to understand is that in this process is that time equals reward. The more time that you spend with her in getting her to communicate to you at the front end always yields a higher reward to you in the studio. The less time, the faster it takes place, the less involvement is, the less reward there will be to the studio for the work and effort. Time equals reward. It's a natural response, because what happens is that she, the more time that she's around you, will become drawn to you emotionally and will want and feel obligated to tip you. You may have a woman who comes in at the front end of this and says, oh, I'm only wanting 2 11x14s and a few 5x7s. But you've gone through this process, you've spent time to her, you listened to her, you created an image that fulfilled her heart. Response. So here's a way to analyze this. At the front end, if she says, well, I'm only interested in 2 11x14s, a few 5x7s, she's telling you what she wants or needs in a logical state. She's saying, if I'm practical, this is what I've budgeted, this is what I'm going to spend. However, in the emotional state, later on when the relationship is there, she may end up buying 2 24-30s and a bunch of 11x14s and be apologizing for not being able to do more because you worked so hard, you did so much for me, when she's in an emotional state. Now, write this down. This is very, very crucial. People buy what they want, not what they need. One more time. People buy what they want, not what they need. And remember that all sales begin logically. And logically, when she really thinks about it, she's only going to spend this amount. Emotionally, once she's involved in it, she will spend that amount plus. So people buy what they want, not what they need. And so as a result, we need to be very, very careful about front-end statements. I've had the studios make the mistake of actually going back and saying, okay, now I see that you were planning on getting a couple 11x14s and the 5x7s. What did you want? And not realize that she was prepared to go beyond that. And you yourself brought her back to reality. And she bought the minimal amount. And that's not our job. There's no reason to go through the process if we cannot expect to be rewarded well for what we're doing. There's no reason to do this. We might as well just become a factory, running people and flopping people down in front of a muslin, snapping photographs, and take orders. Because at that point in time, there's no emotion involved in it. It's all logic and it's all price. Whereas most traditional studios today need to find out. You may be able to take care of her need. You may not be able to be rewarded at the level right now, because one of which is she is looking for a gift item. Now, it's very important that we understand, as a backdrop of this, that we understand how the American public actually buys. Do you realize that there are times where people purchase seasonally and are only motivated by purchasing for gifts, of which they will spend less money than another time when they're motivated by a specific home want, of which they will be motivated by emotion, of which they will spend quite a bit more. Let me give you an example. Christmas. Let's give Grandma some pictures of us for Christmas. We can go out and we can get a bunch of things. We only have to do one-stop shopping, and that's what we're going to do. So they call the studios around, they find the most affordable package, the most reasonable Christmas promotion, and they go get some pictures made. So the studio not realizing what's going on, goes out and they not only do that, but then they do these incredible, elaborate sittings, with beautiful life story and everything like that, and she still buys images that should be displayed. And she buys these little bitty gift packages because the studio owner never realized this was not the moment that she was looking for something for herself. Understand, she may not be looking for a phase one into the camera photograph for herself, but she knows that's what mom wants. That's what grandma wants. And as a result, because we didn't do our job, we didn't realize there's another time and another purchase for the story that is tugging at her heart, which is her portrait, her feelings, of which doesn't matter if grandma likes it or mom's like it. This is hers. It's very important that we understand the seasonal impulse times that are involved. So a studio that's smart has these strategies in place and it has images that are available during these gift impulse seasonal times, but also has the backdrop of them when they walk in. So she comes in for the, what I'll call the flop down in front of the muslin canvas background. Gets the shot done. But what she saw, because you're taking care of her need, was what she wanted. There's where the power of the display comes in. And smart merchandisers know that, and a good designer knows that. And she understands that when she walks in, nothing's an accident in this room here. We have surrounded you with images that show you that you can have a Jaguar. You may be purchasing the Kia today, but we can provide the Jaguar. We're even going to be so much as that we're even going to present it as an idea that you might want to consider, even though you may not be ready. But we're going to flatter you and believe that you could afford and want to own something that was personalized. But see, what if at this point in time we don't have an effective interview program and find out, wow, I really would like to do something for mom, but I hadn't thought about doing this. Could you do this for me also? Realizing that you have established in this 2 sales. Now, here's a little disclaimer I want to share with you. It's called budget. Money. How much can I afford to spend? If she has a limited budget, if you split this session out, she will disperse that whole budget over the whole session. Would it be better for you to follow up and do another session for her at another time when she's in another purchasing sequence to where she would make maybe a similar purchase, only it would be a one single image? A lot of studios are not doing well in understanding the buying signal and the buying sequence. But again, you have to be vertically merchandised. You're going to have some moderately priced impulse type packages and things for them in a normal studio, unless you're in a place where you can niche it. Don't get me wrong. I'm very, very close friends of a lot of men that are in a lot of urban areas, and they have niche marketed themselves because they can and because it's available. But not most of us enjoy that. We have to be a broader vendor of different services and products. So now she sits down, she goes through this presentation. She hears you speaking words that are about feelings and love and relationships. And you got her moving into this side of her. Because you have to, when, from the time she walks in, move her from logical. Remember, all sales begin logically? When she walks in the door, she's cataloging you. What you are trying to do through all these visual senses is to move her to the emotional side of her thinking. In other words, you're moving her from one side of the brain to the other side of the brain. And that is a process. It is a journey that takes place. It isn't just a matter of talking about sizes and images. You want to find out what makes her heart click. Powerful questions, like we'd mentioned before. How do you want to feel about the portrait? How do you want to feel about it 25 years from now? What is special and significant about this person, this child? What makes them unique? What is unique about your relationship? What is it that you really, really want to convey? What is it that someday, if the grandchildren get this, what do you want this collection to reflect? It can be a likeness in front of a canvas background, or it could be a personally crafted designer image. It makes no difference to us. We'll do both. Depends upon where you are and what you're ready for at this point in time. So now, through this whole process of having the right words, the right sound, She's assessed you as someone who's there to work with her. Now, it's very important psychologically that we assume a relationship. And this is called transference. If she perceives that you have this right here that you're trying to sell to her, in other words, you say, here, she says, well, that's too much. Here's a little less. That's still too much. I don't like this. The transference is where, in her mind's eye, the two of you are here, and you are discussing how she can afford that with the two of you shoulder to shoulder. You're helping her own, helping her make a wise investment, helping her design, helping her be a co-planner of where she wants to be and how she can afford that, versus putting yourself in the position of saying, you know, I have this, I want to sell this to you. Versus, I know that you really love this and everything you dreamed about. Let's talk about how I can help you own it. And you notice the words I'm using? Own it, invest in, commission. Very important, the wordsmithing part comes around, because I'm speaking a language now that conveys something different to her than said something, well, you want to buy the pen? No? You don't want to buy the pen? Well, how about just the part that goes in the middle that makes the ink go? That's how we sell a lot of times. Fact is, we have no plan at all. We're just trying to move it out. Or we come in and we stay silent and say, well, which pen do you want? You want the red one, the yellow one, the green one, the blue one? What do you want? Help me out here. I'll provide it for you. Again, we're back to that order-taking mode. So in walking through this, understand what we're trying to do, once again, is get this feeling in this sense so that we can convey that to the portraitist, who will be able to understand some of the emotional cues that need to be transposed onto that final image. Here's a problem, and I don't know exactly how to address it. Photographers become defensive of their photography. In other words, they go out and they subjectively make a decision to create an image that they like. Consumer comes in, and for whatever reason, it wasn't what they wanted. It really wasn't what they thought it was going to be, because nobody ever really talked to them first. You see how subjective this becomes? They didn't tell us because they really didn't know, so we're out here hoping that we'll do it. We're hoping that through this process that we will throw enough images out there. That's called the barnyard concept of imaging too, that maybe one will stick. So we come in because we've never talked to them, make all these images, they end up in the front room, and they come out and say, well, Bob, they really didn't like the photography. They weren't that pleased with it. Well, what's wrong with it? Or what's worse is that they pick an image that I don't like. And I want to go out there and explain to them why they need this one. And there's where we get ourselves so emotionally charged, when in actuality, if we were really honest about it, we need to convince her in that presentation. You might even use these words. We could create a portrait and portray you 1,000 different ways. We need your help as portraitists, because we're not picture takers, to spend a few moments with you and find out about you, about your personality, about the other personalities. Because our job, our role as we perceive it, is we're your historian. Not to record the faces, but to record who you were and what you were. And so as historians, you're record keeper, someone who's going to create an image that will live a century from now, who may be dragging that in a century from now and all tattered and torn to go to somebody for a copy and restoration, like we do all the time in the studio, of these old black and white images of the former generations. We may be creating that today. And the key element is, what do you want that to say? Now, tomorrow, and way down the road. So we need your help in this. The easy part would be is that we just be like every other studio around, and we just be a picture taker. We'd come in, we'd throw you down, flop you down in front of a background, take an exposure, walk out, take your money, you'd go on. We have chosen not to do that. We have chosen to be creators. We can take care of that need. Don't get me wrong, and you'll be very pleased with that if that's what you're prepared to do. It'll be your decision, not our decision. But we need your help in designing and telling your story. And therein lies that transference. Now imagine where we are right now. She's walked in, she's cataloged me. She's looked and she's cataloged the story. She's made the assessment. She's looking at the images. We were talking to her. And look how far we have moved the relationship now, because one of the things you're trying to do at the backdrop of this, you want her involved in the planning and the designing of her personal portraits. Why? Reward. Reward. Because now what you're doing is doing what I called a shared creation. A creation now that is a combination of your artistry, your skills, and your perceptions combined with her wants, her needs. Now, listen to the phrase that I'm going to share with you that has a lot of powerful implications in explaining to her what's going to take place. Let's say she's sitting here and we're down to the planning phases and say, look, it's important that you understand that there are three key elements in the making of a great portrait. First of all, the first important element is light. We paint with light. You use many, many different forms of light. That's what the word photograph means, to paint with light. Now, we use the light to create texture. We use a light to transfer feelings. We can, by the type of light and the style of the light we can use, we can make a scene strong, soft, subtle, romantic, or harsh. So we use light. That is our job after we're done in working with you to interpret that. Second element, very powerful element in all art forms, is composition and design. How we structure the story inside that. We can convey serenity, power, faith, hope, any number of things, love, rejection, by design. The third part, which is your key element, is your story. Do you remember one important thing? You actually colorize, if we're doing color work, and story, which you bring. It's our job to interpret it. All three of those are equally important. So as you bring your story to us, we then make the determination in terms of the design and the elements that we would want to have included in it, and the style and the structure and the strength of the lighting that we would use, and how we would paint with it. So it's a very carefully choreographed, artistically rendered interpretation, because we're not picture takers. We're portraitists. Now you can understand at that point in time, I would assume that she's understanding that there's quite a bit of difference between you and them. But more importantly, you have responded to that flashing light in the middle of her chest that says you are important. See, no time was spent bragging about ourselves, talking about ourselves, or flaunting ourselves. By listening to her and making the suggestions, I would have a pretty good belief system that at this point in time, she's absolutely confident that you have what it takes. You are the people, and you didn't even have to say the words. You don't have to do all the record of awards and recognitions and all that stuff. It doesn't matter. Because she believes it here, not here. And this is where you want her to believe it. And that's how you present yourself and build a relationship. And so at this moment in this presentation, now you sit down and sketch out ideas. Show her examples of proper toning and proper colorization, proper clothing. You actually will get down to the tips part of it, which is now last, which is where you finalize the real objectives. Whereas most of us start off with having customers coming in, so we want to talk to you about clothes and makeup and give you a few tips. You understand how cold that is? Well, we'll finally get down to that end. But what we didn't do in just doing a straightforward tips conversation, we didn't marry her emotionally to us. That is the reason why. Remember, time equals reward. Now, an interesting thing happens if the photographer is perceptive and skilled at this, and really responds to the notes and the information that's provided to them. When they conclude their portrait session and they close their case, no longer are they feeling this pressure that we all felt so many years, which is, I wonder how much they like what I did. When they close their case, their thought is, and they can look at her right in the eye and say, do you think we did it? Because she'll know, because she has a predetermined set right there. She'll know if whether or not she believes we did it. You know, that takes a lot of pressure off. And let me share with you the power of this in terms of sales. And listen, this is so critical. She already owns it. She's not rejecting your ideas. You understand? Coming in, and she's not just being the person to say, like it, don't like it, don't like it, reject that, edit that, cut that out. No, no. She owns this idea. She owns this portrait. You have sat there and you've walked her through the whole thing, and I guarantee you that the reward will far exceed what she had done if we just established, well, we have a portrait session. Our session fee is X amount of dollars. Come on by. We have some portraits, then you'll pick them later on, and we go through the edit process. The edit process is to where she comes now, and she subjects you to scrutinizing whether or not she approves or disapproves of what you did. Now, here's an important point, and especially with some of the modern technology, and it's very, very important after the session, that when you prepare her presentation, you minimize the amount of decisions that she's going to make. In other words, you will arrange the images in the order of your belief system in terms of what you believe to be the very, very best. And you will prepare yourself in advance to talk to her about why you believe that image did what? Fulfilled her request. Fulfilled her dream. So now you would go in there and you'd be describing the image. You'd be talking about the relationship and why you felt so strongly about what she conveyed in her relationship with her husband. And notice Johnny out here, Mr. Independent. I mean, just look at that. I mean, forever and ever you'll be able to remember him as he was. I mean, and you'll see daughter and how she was tied to daddy in that special time, that right now she's her hero, or he's her hero. And that is conveyed there because these are the things she told you in advance that were important to her. And as a result, you talk about, again, her feelings, her thoughts. And that changes the presentation from being, oh, I like that, I don't like that, I like that, I don't like that, I like that expression, I don't like that. The other thing of it is the photographer needs to minimize the amount of poses that they show the people. Now, this is just a personal bias. I find that photographers who do family portraits and do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 poses are insecure. They do not know where they're going. They've not interviewed properly, and they're doing what I call barnyard shooting. They're hoping that somehow they scoop enough of that stinky stuff against the wall, something will stick. When in actuality, a skilled portraitist, a skilled photographer, may need to work with only one well-composed, well-designed presentation, and they will shoot, I use the word, I violated it myself, they will continue to photograph in that environment until they have accomplished their goals. They will work at that and work at that until they have the perfect expressions and the perfect feelings. So now when you arrange them, she's not having to look at pose X, pose Y, pose Z, pose A, pose B, pose C. That's just confusing. Now what's worse, what if she found one from every one that she liked? And she has a budget of $800. You'll end up spreading that whole sale over all of those images because she'll want to own a little bit of everything. And you will not have achieved the goal of having her be able to present an image that would be worthy of a wall collection or a wall presentation because she'll spread it out all over. Another thing is edit ruthlessly. And I'm going to share with you a bias, especially with the new technology. Never edit in front of her. If there are outtakes and there are mistakes that need to be handled before with the new technology, you remove them before they're ever there, because the moment you start editing, every time you reject a close eye, a bad expression, your value as a skilled portraitist goes down, because they see each one of those as a mistake. Psychologically, they're wired for that, because now it puts you in the same category as they were, because they'll take their images to Walmart or Sears or someplace and pull them out and say, I don't like that, I don't like that. Oh, I got a good one. So in the back of their mind, they're saying, well, he's just like we are. He's just shooting until he gets something. And it's very important that never, ever take place, because what will happen is the reward falls, because it adds a negative element to that presentation. You'd be better off to call a session where you created 40 portrait originals with one good design and move that down to 4 or 5 really great images. That you would be pleased to sell any one of those or have them displayed in a home. And let her work on those 5. But more than likely, if you have and understand the design, she will accept your original. She'll want to look at the others to verify it. And you can go back and compare the two when you get into that process. But especially if you're at a point in time where you're proofless. I sense and I feel that in the marketplace today that the time of the preview is slowly going away because of the issue of safety of the creation of the images. I mean, people are indiscriminately copying images. And though it's illegal, it's improper, and I think kind of an immoral thing to do, it is being done. And we have to do things to ensure that we can hire a professional staff, afford a professional staff, be able to be afforded a reasonable return for our time and our investment and our money as business people. And one of the things that's going to do that is coming up with some form of presentation to where the preview is eliminated from that sales session. Now, let's go back to the controlling of the entire presentation at this point in time. Here are some rules in establishing a checklist, if you would, a proper presentation. One of which, that the lighting and the air conditioning and all the creature comforts are final checked before she comes in. We have gone through, we've done an analysis, we've got it. 2, her images are properly prepared in sequence and they are ready for her presentation. 3, we have notified people that we are involved in this and that we are not available for interviewing and working with other customers. Now, this is very important. I realize that the phone rings all the time. I hold a bias. This is only my opinion. The studios are free to do what they want to with it. But when you are working with a customer and a client, you would be better off to allow the phone to roll over into voicemail and pick that up as soon as you're free, rather than continue to interrupt a person. And I think it's becoming more and more critically sensitive. Why? Because time is, we used to say time is money. I believe that in today's society, as fast as going, that time is more important than money. She does not have a lot of time. And it is an irritation to many customers that here she is. She's driven 20, 30, 40, 50 miles or whatever. She has made her appointment. She is ready to be handled. And she's constantly interrupted all the time with the phone. And some people say, well, yeah, but I really want the phone to be handled and I want somebody to feel like they're getting the service. Well, the point is, if it interrupted or offended the bird in the hand, why would you want the one in the bush? Because all you're doing at that point in time is setting up what I call an offense schedule. Because if you're going to offend her, you're going to offend the next person too, because that phone will never stop. This is just a personal bias. It has to be a decision that each studio will make in that personal time. But I believe that the designer needs to have uninterrupted time with that client. Why? Because she needs to feel it's special. And if the phone rings and she may say, well, do you want to go ahead and get that? We need to be able to look at her and say, no, this is your time. And we always give our client here the interrupted time. We explain that on the telephone when it calls in. We would love to be able to catch every incoming call. But we have decided that your time is most important. This is yours. We don't want to waste your time. Now, she may go ahead and say, no, 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 go ahead and get it. At that point in time, you make your decision. But the point is, you've made that statement for her, that she knows she does not have to be interrupted. This is hers. Again, every step building up to the point that I'm important and that I'm here to be taken care of. The other important thing in the designer is she must have all of the tools, all the handouts, all the descriptive brochures, everything at her fingertips, and so that she doesn't have to get up and run around, get up and run around, get up and run around if it's an initial studio presentation, that she has everything at her disposal at this point in time. Now, the other thing that she needs to be able to make sure that is happening at that point in time with the customer is to be able to allow the other staff members an opportunity to engage. Now, what I'm saying is that let's say that we have a customer come in and we know that Mrs. Jones is thinking about having a designer portrait created, for lack of better words. So the designer has made arrangements so that the portraitist would at some point in time in that presentation drop by, at which point in time the designer will introduce the portraitist to her, and they would talk about how excited they are about creating her original portrait piece. It's very, very important. Now, another time when you would engage the portraitist to come in would be in the final presentation. Let's say the designer now is showing the work and she knows that they want the portraitist to come in. And let's say that they have together selected the #1 image. So let's say I'll use myself as an example, and my designer says that Bob and I are really excited about this one. We came together on this, and we believe this fulfills all of the dreams and the thoughts that you wanted to convey in this. It is wonderfully lit. It is very, very creatively designed, and it has all the feelings that we believe that you're wanting to convey. Let me show it to you. And you would go through and you would show the image to her and walk through it while it stayed in the sizing that you would have. Now, somewhere in that line, you might say, you know, by the way, Bob wanted to really come back and let you know how much he appreciated doing this session. Let me give him a note that you're here. So you might walk back. And so I would come out and I would greet her and I would sit briefly and we'd chit-chat now about, and I would talk to her about the experience of the session and really convey to her how excited I was and how much I believed that we had accomplished, you know, for her what she wanted. And I would leave and depart. Understand that this is all a part of the strengthening of our caring and how important she was and how important it was that we fulfilled her vision for this portrait. These little pauses and the ability for the staff to interact like that are very, very strong in continuing that drama, if you would, of her feeling, I feel like a queen. I mean, every need that I had, they listened to me. Finally, somebody out in the world recognized I have feelings. And they didn't spend all their time just talking at me. They spent their time listening to me. So now when she goes to justify the expense or the investment to her husband, understand the dialogue that happens now? She's not doing anything except she's already set the stage for him, but she's explaining to him the process and how much she wants that. Not needs it. She wants it. Remember, people buy what they want. Now let me help explain one very, very critical point in this process. All the way through each of these first contacts, or even right up into the time that she did have the creation of the session and during that creative part right there, there is a sense for a lot of people that there's a doubt as to whether or not how much she likes it. The final putting it together is when you make that final presentation in there with her images. At that point in time is where she will finally make her decision. Up until that time, there's that sense of the logic that I'm going to get the couple 11 by 14s and the small ones. Understand? She's emotionally charged in it because now is where the tire meets the road. Now, let's talk about what happens at this point in time in the design presentation. Let's talk about a couple of the rules and a couple of the things that happen at this moment. If she initially responds to, oh, I like that, any criticism after that point in time is about money. It's not about the image. It's about money. For example, she really likes it. She really responds. And now is where the wariness and at least the awareness of a good designer comes in to know different personality types. She's going to have to know how an analytical makes that final decision. She's going to have to know how a creative personality makes that decision. She's going to have to know how a controller makes that decision. And she's going to have to know how a steady makes that decision. You've got to have at least 4 main personality types that are involved in that and the variations in between each one. But let's just take the average. The average is that 80% of the time you make all the decisions. Ultimately, they will get to the point in time in the session where they say, oh, man, I love them all. What would you do? 80% of the time, you're going to have to make that decision. And for crying out loud, make a reward decision. Be honest with her. Be honest with her. If the image is not going to be properly sized in 11 by 14, be honest with her. Make an honest recommendation. That's what she's wanting. And this is where we kind of lose it because we become fearful that, I'm actually suggesting she spend a lot of money. You can always come down. She can always say, well, that's great, I'd love to do that, but I can't afford it. Well, that's okay. So let's sit down and we have the presentation. She's liking the image as it goes through right there. And she says, I really love it. Now let's talk about one type of consumer. This is the consumer that goes to the mall, finds a blouse that she likes, goes through, and then starts looking at the seams to see if there's a flaw. So she can take that blouse up there and say, I really like this, but there's this one flaw here. In other words, if she can find a defect, you'll give her a discount. That's okay. That's just the way she shops. Remember what I said earlier? All sales are a game. Now when we come to the part where they're actually making the decision, this is where the gamemanship becomes a real chess match. This is nothing but a game at this point in time. Now, somebody say, well, they really didn't want a big one. See, big one? Yeah, well, right. Want to test it? Show her a sofa print, a 40-50. Offer it to her for $15. She will take that print so fast your head will spin. Of course she wanted it that size. The issue was not whether or not she wanted a big one. The question was whether or not she could afford a big one. It's not size at all. It's money. And we're at that critical moment where money has to be talked about. So we're trying to figure out how she can afford what she wants. So now we're sitting there and she's looking at it, she likes it, and so she's going through and she sees a wrinkle. Now, a smart designer has already in that presentation, because when she went through and said, and she would make a presentation like this, that this image would look best in a sofa size. Now, I, for one, don't believe in mentioning dimensions, so I would say that they would understand that a sofa size would be a 50-inch print. A 30-40 is a love seat size. A 24-30 is a small wall. A 24 is a hallway size. And a 16-20 print is an accent or cluster grouping size. 11 by 14 is a coffee table size. 8 by 10 and smaller are album or gift sizes. So I don't really recommend naming sizes, but if you use sizes, it's fine. But let's say that you're recommending that a sofa size, this would be perfect in, meaning that you're looking at least a 50-inch print. And so you go through and you would sit down and say that in this particular scenario, there will be a team of 17 artisans that will finish this for property being displayed in your home. Let me share with you some of the things that we are going to ask our artists to do to finish this into being able to be displayed in your home. And what you would do is you'd point out those little corrections that you would make artistically before she has a chance to say, you know, what about this? In other words, you would talk about the artist. Now, I, for one, do not believe in the term retouch. I believe that every bit of the artwork that is done, it could be facial artistry, it could be eye artistry, it could be glass artistry, it could be background artistry, it could be a clothing artistry, but it is not retouching. Because you need to help them understand that a team of people are creating this, and they all need to be rewarded. And so you'd say there'll be a team of 15 to 17 artisans that will work under Bob's direction in creating this for you. Let me share with you some of the areas that he's already directed me to, you know, that we would like to see adjust. Because remember that most of our portraiture, especially in our designer lines, are all mixed medium art. It will take approximately 60 hours to finish and handcraft your final image. The investment for this is X amount. Now, at this point in time, you're going to say, I can't afford that. Well, you're not surprised. You're not surprised. So you would then adjust and make your presentation and say, well, let me share with you another option. So let's say we go to the love seat size, the 40-inch print, and talk about it. Now, let me talk about the rule of projection. And the period of time that we taught at the Wall Portrait Conference, I will share with you this is an absolutely known and given. You never go down and come up in the sizing. You don't take her down to an 8 by 10 and start walking them up. You always start at the Jaguar and you walk yourself down. And while she is thinking about that size, you immediately go back up to the largest size that you can show it. For example, let's say that we show her a small wall, which would be a 30-inch print. And as she looks at this small wall print here, and you're talking about it, you go ahead and readjust that and go back up to the couch size, the sofa size. So she's always resting on the largest sized image that was there. You never leave it on the adjusted size. So if you get down to looking at an accent print or a 1620, you don't leave it there. You'll start talking about that and immediately go up there and put her back up on the 60-inch while you discuss it. So always before her visually is the largest size that you could possibly present for her. It's called the soaking law, and it's a psychological response. And in the testing, I know that Ken Whitmire and others did in this whole process, they found that if you ever went down and you started at an 8 by 10 and you let them soak on that for a period of time, by the time you made it to a 1620, it will be a large print. It's a fairly amazing phenomenon in selling decor images. Now, she's not ready for that. She's interested in package A. That's okay. You're doing your work. You're making her make a decision. Now is at a point in time that we have to understand two very important terms and two important things that are taking place. One is the difference between a stall and an objection. If someone says, your price is very high, that is not an objection. That's a stall. Or they say, your prices are a lot higher than the guy down the road. That is not an objection. That is a stall. So what is the difference? An objection is a statement made by the consumer that clearly says no. To object to something means to say no to something. To question or make a statement which needs more information to be verified is a stall. So by saying your prices are high, she's not objecting to it. She's wanting you to explain it. Do you understand that? But if she says, that is completely outside my budget, There's no way I can afford that. That is an objection. What happens with a lot of designers is at the moment they talk any price objection or price stalling at a halt, they quit. And they don't do their job. For example, they don't even know how to respond. And in the next tape, we're going to talk about responses and questions, which are very formal. But let me give you a clue of them. Let's talk about a response to a pricing. One of which was the first response that we're normally taught in basic sales is what called I understand. She says, that's a lot of money. That's too much money. You're a lot higher than the person down the road. I understand. I understand exactly how you feel. And I possibly might feel the same way if I were you. Now comes what I call the cushion statement. First of all, what you did is that you do not defend and get a feeling about the price. Once again, going back to this thing, what are we trying to do? We're trying to be shoulder to shoulder to help her justify and explain and own how and learn how she can afford this. Does that make sense? So as a result, we don't have to be defensive about it. First of all, we know for a fact that the pricing that we have in the studios is way, way, way underpriced for what they should be receiving for the amount of time, talent, and effort that's made in creating the image. It really is. So, I understand exactly how you feel. Others have felt the same way. A long time ago, we had to decide if we're going to create an excellent product that would last a lifetime and fulfill people's dreams and be able to charge a fair price, or to make a cheap product and leave it at that. We elected to create a lasting image for our studio and for our customers, something which we would be proud of forever and ever, and we could stand behind and guarantee for a lifetime, because we guarantee our portraits for a lifetime. That's a lot of difference than somebody saying, oh, what do I say? She thinks it's too much money. You know, now what's she going to do with it? You see what happens at this point in time? Oh. Now, there could be other responses to that. The very reason that we're a little bit more is indicative of the time, effort, and the creativity that we're going to put into creating your image so that it will last you a lifetime. You see, I mean, you don't have to, never apologize for your prices. Agree with her, but be prepared to know what to say. Well, I don't know about this. I need to talk to my husband. What do you think he would say? Isolate it. Find out. Always question the stall. Always question the objection. Find out and verify if that really is what's going on. Is this just a tactic to get in here and put it off because all of a sudden she realized she can't have what she wants? Is it too much money? Does she not like it? Isolate that. Verify that by having trained responses to that. She's hesitating a little bit. Put it on the table. Do you mind if I ask why you're hesitating? You see what I'm saying? You have to be ready at that point in time to gain control, because all of your work and everything right now pivots upon this relationship. And this relationship right now gives you the opportunity, because you now are dealing with somebody you know, they know you. And you know that at some point in time you're going to be talking about money. They knew that when they came in. You knew it when they came in. They've known the journey all along. Now it's a matter of negotiating. And it's purely a game. There's nothing really going on. There are some people that come in and gnarl you for a discount. You know, they really are not that mean-spirited. They're just going to negative you. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some people that by nature are negative. I mean, we deal with them, and you know, it's sad that they live that way. But understand that they're not picking you out to be the one business by which they react the way that they react. They treat everybody the same way. They respond and shop with everybody the same way. It's not you. Don't take it personal, because that's how they have chosen to play the game. Remember, from the front door in, this is all stage. every element here. We dress as performers to meet them. We display to meet them. We put music to meet them. We put smells to meet them. We create images to meet them. Everything is staged. And so as a result, we can continue to learn and develop this and working through this incredibly important moment right now in terms of how we respond and how we know what to say and where to go. Another response that I heard from one guy, and I don't know, I suppose that you could try it, but anyway, when he talked about price objection, it was Tom Winninger. And Tom said, "Thank you for noticing." When it came to pricing, the price is a lot higher than anybody else. Thanks for noticing. A long time ago, we had to decide if we were going to create a wonderful image, take the time to do it right, hire the proper teams, create something that we could guarantee for a lifetime. I mean, that's, you know, it's really, be proud of what you're pricing. Be proud of what they're investing. I guarantee you when their house burns down, they're not going to be ripping up the carpet and running out the door with it. I can guarantee you that they're not going to be worried about the sofa. They're going to be grabbing those memories. They're going to be grabbing their history. Recently, I was visiting in John's home, and John Wurzel, and he has an image in there, or a gift in there, that is even more precious than a photograph. His granddaughters and grandchildren made him a designer piece with the help of their mom, of just the little handprints of the age that they are right now, all in really neat colors with a matching frame. Now, interestingly enough, there is no negative for that. You know, photographically at the backside of it, there may be a way to recreate that. But that image there is a one-of-a-kind original, of which is irreplaceable, and of which there could be no value placed upon it, because it conveys a moment and a time that will never, ever, ever, ever be revisited again. And remember, that's what we're dealing with in the portrait studio, is that we are first and foremost historians. Life is a journey that is like walking down a bridge by which, as we look back, there's no turning back. It's like that bridge falls off behind us. And as we look at each moment that's put in our hands, it's like water that just runs through our fingers. How do we go back and retrace and recreate this moment that will never, ever happen? This one spatial moment. And it's only in the hands and with the team of a very, very carefully trained and skilled design team that people can actually own a memory. Their memory. We don't go to the shelf and grab it off. That's them. That's their thoughts. That's their feelings transposed into an image that we call a portrait. We are their historians. And I really believe that today that we move more and more and more to the mass marketing and mass merchandising, of which I believe is important in the studio, don't get me wrong. And we need to have that element, because that need element will bring people in to expose them into these other parts of our business. So I believe, without a doubt, that the studio has to be vertically marketed in most areas and most geographics today. Again, re-emphasizing, some people can niche, but most of us have to have a broader, more general presentation. Now, how do I prepare myself as a designer for this moment? What are the things that I have to do? In the next series of tapes, we're going to deal with some of the very, very specific elements of questioning and interviewing, and also, more importantly, having professional responses. What questions should I ask? How do I control that conversation? Where should I take each step and each process? How do I move them? Because at this point in time, now we have to break down the whole presentation into its most simplistic forms, words and phrases.